like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
What if the most revealing story about Jimin and Jungkook was never spoken aloud? What if it wasn't hidden in lyrics, interviews, or carefully edited behind-the-scenes footage, but instead lived quietly in the seconds when they looked at each other and thought no one was watching? As 2025 unfolds, fans are beginning to notice something subtle yet impossible to ignore. Their words remain warm and familiar, their laughter unchanged, but their eye contact tells a story that feels deeper, more layered, and undeniably different from before. In a world where every gesture is analyzed frame by frame, eye contact remains one of the few things that cannot be fully controlled. It slips through rehearsed personas and reveals instinct, comfort, tension, affection, and trust in its rawest form. And for Jimin and Jungkook, whose bond has been observed for over a decade, the evolution of their gazes in 2025 feels less like coincidence and more like quiet communication unfolding in real time. To understand what's changing, we first need to understand what has always been there. From the earliest days of BTS, Jimin and Jungkook's eye contact followed a recognizable rhythm. Jungkook's gaze often lingered, unfiltered, instinctive, almost unconscious, while Jimin's eyes responded with intention, softness, and a knowing calm. Their exchanges were playful yet intense, filled with teasing glances, shy smiles, and moments where one would look first and the other would follow without hesitation. Fans came to recognize this as their baseline, a shared understanding so natural that it required no explanation. As early 2025 content began to surface, interviews, promotional appearances, casual live broadcasts, that familiar pattern was still present. They laughed easily, reacted instinctively to each other, and shared looks that felt comfortable and unforced. In group settings, Jungkook's eyes still searched for Jimin during moments of uncertainty, while Jimin remained attentive, grounding, and quietly reassuring. This established the norm fans expected to see: warmth, familiarity, and a connection that felt unbreakable in its ease. But beneath that familiarity, something else began to emerge. Eye contact in human psychology is often described as one of the most powerful indicators of emotional closeness. Prolonged eye contact can signal trust, vulnerability, and deep attachment. Avoided eye contact, on the other hand, can suggest emotional regulation, restraint, or an awareness of boundaries. In celebrity dynamics, especially for idols whose relationships are constantly scrutinized, eye contact becomes even more meaningful. It is both instinctive and strategic, a balance between authenticity and protection. As 2025 progressed, fans started noticing subtle shifts in how Jimin and Jungkook looked at each other. Not dramatic changes, not obvious distance, but micro-adjustments that felt deliberate. Their gazes seemed more measured, more intentional. Where Jungkook once stared openly and without filter, there were now moments where he looked away sooner, as if catching himself. Where Jimin once held eye contact effortlessly, there were instances where he softened his gaze, glanced down briefly, or smiled before breaking the moment. These were not signs of discomfort. If anything, they suggested awareness. In newer content, especially during quieter moments, when conversations slowed, when laughter faded, when cameras lingered just a second too long, their eye contact took on a different quality. It wasn't playful in the way fans were used to. It was steady, grounded, almost intimate in its restraint. The kind of look exchanged by two people who understand each other so well that they no longer need to prove it. There were moments where Jungkook would begin to speak, pause, and instinctively look toward Jimin, not for approval, but for alignment. Jimin's response was rarely exaggerated. A small nod, a brief smile. Sometimes just eye contact held for a beat longer than necessary. These exchanges felt less like performance and more like confirmation: we're on the same page. I see you. I'm here. What made these moments stand out was not how often they happened, but how carefully they unfolded. In group settings, their eye contact became more selective. They no longer sought each other constantly, but when they did connect, the intensity was unmistakable. It was as if they were choosing when to let that connection surface, rather than allowing it to spill out freely as it once did. This shift has led many fans to ask an inevitable question: has their bond changed? The answer, perhaps, is more complex than a simple yes or no. Bonds do not disappear when they evolve. They deepen, mature, and adapt to new realities. By 2025, Jimin and Jungkook are no longer the youngest members navigating fame together for the first time. They are artists with individual identities, experiences, and emotional growth shaped by years of global attention. Their connection now exists within that maturity. Eye contact, in this context, becomes less about reassurance and more about understanding. Less about seeking, more about choosing. When Jimin looks at Jungkook now, there is a calm confidence in his gaze, as if he no longer needs to check whether Jungkook is okay. He already knows. When Jungkook meets Jimin's eyes, there is a quiet steadiness, a sense of grounding rather than longing. Some moments feel almost private, despite being public. A glance exchanged during a pause in conversation. A look held just long enough to be felt, then released. These are not accidental. They are the kind of exchanges that come from years of shared history, unspoken conversations, and emotional safety built over time. What's most fascinating is how these shifts invite fans to reconsider what closeness looks like. We are used to equating intimacy with obvious affection, constant eye contact, visible reactions, dramatic moments. But the 2025 dynamic between Jimin and Jungkook suggests something quieter. A connection that no longer needs to announce itself to be real. Their eyes no longer ask questions. They answer them. And perhaps that is the most telling story of all. As fans continue to watch new content unfold throughout the year, one thing becomes clear: the story of Jimin and Jungkook's bond is not fading. It is refining itself. Their eye contact, once playful and overflowing, now feels intentional and deeply rooted. It speaks of trust that doesn't waver, of understanding that doesn't need constant reinforcement, and of a connection strong enough to exist even in restraint. So the next time you watch them share a glance, don't look for the obvious. Look for the pause, the softness, the moment where words fall away and only understanding remains. Because in 2025, the most powerful conversation Jimin and Jungkook are having might be happening silently, right before our eyes. In the end, perhaps the true beauty of Jimin and Jungkook's 2025 dynamic lies not in what has changed, but in what has endured. Their eye contact no longer seeks validation or reassurance. It reflects certainty. A quiet confidence born from years of shared growth, unspoken understanding, and moments lived far beyond the reach of cameras. What once overflowed now settles into something steadier, something deeper, something that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. As fans, we often search for grand gestures and obvious signs, hoping to define their bond through visible proof. But the story unfolding this year invites us to look closer, to pay attention to what exists in the spaces between seconds. A glance held just long enough. A look exchanged and gently released. These are not absences, they are choices. And choices, especially silent ones, often reveal more than words ever could. Jimin and Jungkook's eyes in 2025 tell a story of trust that no longer needs explanation, of connection that survives evolution, and of a bond strong enough to grow quieter without growing weaker. And maybe that is the most powerful truth of all. Some relationships don't fade when they change. They simply learn how to speak in a softer, braver language.